It's been a few weeks since I posted the last video. I've been busy improving my 3D modelling skills and learning 3D printing. Thoroughly enjoyable and very useful. The Gardena spray gun now has a holster, making using it a much more pleasurable experience. Wildflowers. I was recently asked by one of Ireland's largest organisations to quote for planting wildflowers at a location reasonably close to me. I should have quoted them a very reasonable price in order to get the contract. Done absolutely nothing, pitched up a couple of years later and demanded payment, because if you want wildflowers, that's exactly what you do. Nothing. It's quite remarkable the variety and quantity of wildflowers I have in my wildflower patch. And initially I spent a lot of time and some money trying to cultivate this and grow wildflowers, and eventually I gave up and did nothing. These white flowers, past their best now, they were a complete riot a couple of weeks ago. They're all over the place. I don't know what variety they are, but there are lots of them. The purple one there I think is heel all, and I'm not sure again what this purple one is. There are lots of them. That one there with the fern type leaves, that'll flower in a few weeks' time. This is again a different variety. So there are several different varieties. I doubt any of them are from the original packets of seeds that I planted. And as you can see, just astonishing. And it's beautiful. There aren't many insects this year, but a couple of years ago, last year was a poor year for insects as well, but a couple of years ago they just absolutely loved this area. It would be fair comment to say that all that preparation has helped establish this wildflower area. Totally agree with that. However, I certainly haven't been preparing the ground on what used to be the driveway. This is purple clover. And on the lawns here, yes, they've been mowed, but that's all that's happened. And look at all the white clover. Likewise, the driveway, I certainly haven't scarified or mowed it. I've deliberately left it to grow wild so that the edges come in, and the centre reservation hopefully will fill out the rest of it here, which it is slowly. That's plantain, and that's definitely a wild variety, native to Ireland. More heel all growing here. And the reason why I've been so keen to let the driveway grow like this is it's on a slope, and when it rains heavily it washes all the gravel down past the gate there. So in order to bind it all together and stop it all washing away, I'm allowing it to grow. This is a thistle, and there were definitely thistles here when I arrived. I planted quite a lot of lavender, and I think only 2 of them have survived. That's encouraging though. Hopefully they'll survive, thrive and produce seed. But generally everything here is wildflowers, literally. I'm sure some of my investment in bought-in seeds has paid dividends. Pretty sure this is one of those bought-in. Not sure what variety it is, but it's flourishing in this small area. This is a yellow rattle. Again, just about past its best now. And it's definitely from bought-in seed. It predates on grass, so that's fabulous. Allows all the other wildflowers a chance. This would be another one that's possibly from sown seed. I tended to plant the second go that I had at planting wildflowers. Generally I planted them in this area. So yes, I've probably got some return on my investment, but for the most part everything that's here is indigenous wildflowers. Purple clover certainly is native everywhere in Ireland. Even if you have a big budget and sow a large variety of wildflower seeds, it's unlikely that any that aren't suited to the particular locale are going to survive. The ones that are going to survive are probably the ones that are already there to start with. A cow parsley with a bumblebee. Perhaps that came in shot there, hopefully. That's definitely a wildflower. I definitely didn't plant that there. I definitely didn't cultivate this area for anything other than growing Paulownia. I'd almost given up on Paulownia. They don't like wet conditions, and this is the west coast of Ireland. However, this year's been drier than usual with below average rainfall, and although this particular Paulownia is my favourite and seems to be doing better than all the rest, all of the Paulownia are likewise doing much better this year. I stooled this one. It wasn't quite 7 centimetres in diameter, though probably not far off it. Most of those that I planted in this area that I've been preparing for that purpose have perished. A few have survived, including this one, which is making a valiant effort to recover, and I'll likewise do my best to nurture and protect it. I potted up replacements for the area that I've just shown you. The hope is that if I plant them as larger trees, they'll have more chance of surviving. These are Fortunii, a naturally occurring variety, and I'd say these are starting to get to the stage where I can now plant them, thickening up, becoming more sturdy. The next row are Elongata, and they seem to have done much better in terms of growth rate than the Fortunii. I planted these Elongata perhaps 4 weeks later than the Fortunii. I'd also say that quite a few people comment that hybrid growing of Paulownia is big business, and quite a few perhaps vested interests have tried to put me off, saying that all of my Paulownia are probably just tomentosa. If you check out the difference here, it's quite noticeable. The Fortunii are much lighter green colour than the Elongata, These are both naturally occurring varieties. I've also planted up quite a few of the Paulownia, Shantung, and I think Nordmax as well. Perhaps not Nordmax. Let's see. Shantung. Okay, these are all Shantung and Paulownia, which are hybrids. And I can't say that there's a huge difference between them. These were planted up maybe another 2 to 3 weeks later than the elongata. So difficult to say. If they're not going to be a true hybrid from seed, they're not clones. I'm not going to plant clones. Clones can be wiped out if there's one particular issue affecting that particular clone. So I'm into biodiversity, so I'm always going to grow from seed. These would have been seed from Paulownia and Shantung, both hybrid varieties. What can I say? I'll wait till these grow a bit bigger and then I'll plant them as replacements for the losses in this area, and also perhaps for the one or two that have been struggling. Though those that have been struggling down here, due to the drier conditions, even they have performed much better. So fingers crossed for more dry, hot weather. Paulownia also like the heat, and they're a sun-loving variety as well. And this is the most shaded spot. So again, perhaps if I grow them taller to start with, they'll just be above the threshold of the shade line. I'd say that'll be next year for those smaller ones down the bottom. For this year, there's still another 2 to 3 months left of the growing season for Paulownia, possibly 3.5, 4. And so I'm going to plant all the elongata and fortunei in this area. Planting root trained plugs from the plug trays was very easy using these earth augers. This is the 8cm version, which did the large plugs, and the 4cm size did the small plugs. The intention from now on is to grow trees larger so that when I do plant them out, there's less need for vegetation control, but possibly more importantly, they're larger and sturdier and have more chance of surviving. The only larger size of earth auger bit that I could find for the battery operated drill is 10 centimetres. These polypots are 15 centimetres. However, I've been devoting a lot of time to 3D printing, learning the trade as it were, and started experimenting with what will be 10 centimetre friendly earth auger planting sizes. So far the results are encouraging. Nice fresh white roots coming out the bottom of this one. So these are PET G is the type of plastic, and they're supposed to be, PET G is supposed to be more UV resilient and water resistant, and also in terms of fading colours, less chance of the colours fading. But that's not the most important issue for me when experimenting with growing these. The most important issue is that they actually grow in these plastic containers. I've done some research, and both PLA, which is more environmentally friendly, it does biodegrade, though it's biodegrade in inverted commas. I'd say that it's the sort of plastic that, yes, it will biodegrade, but you're talking 50 plus years. I'm not sure what the characteristics, the environmentally friendly characteristics of PETG are, well, I do know PETG can be recycled. It's a hard plastic. I guess that's up to whether the local authorities in your area do recycle these types of plastic. My guess is, having experienced just how incredible 3D printing is, that's going to become more and more popular, and I would encourage, if there's anybody from the authorities listening in, viewing, I'd really encourage them to start preparing for a recycling of these types of plastic. I did look online to find out if there were any companies in Ireland that are recycling. You're talking €150 for a box. You buy the box, it's free shipping, free postage. However, I thought that was really excessive, since they can recycle and resell the plastic. So it's got to be a price point which is going to encourage people like me to recycle. The other factor would be a reuse. So one thing I found with these plastic plug trays is they're pressed plastic, and I have reused them, but they're quite thin pressed plastic. The first batch I got were quite sturdy, and this feels as though it's from that first batch, even though that one's split, that one's cracking, so they're not ideal. That's after about 3 years of use. I'd say I'm going to get 10, 15, perhaps 20 years of use out of these, though the caveat there is that innovation, the speed of innovation and new products that's going to be enabled by 3D printing is going to be vastly accelerated. So what's in vogue this year and the best, most suitable method will be superseded, say, 5 years' time, even less. So recycling is going to be a big issue for plastics and 3D printing in the future. In the meantime, the project for this summer, so far as tree planting is concerned, is to plant up this area with Paulownia. It would just be so nice if they all took. Not only would that give me a nice, dense, lush Paulownia forest, it would be another patch of grass which I don't have to mow. Besides not liking the damp and enjoying the sunshine, Paulownia are also hungry trees, so I'm going to be generous with the poultry manure when planting these. I think what I'm going to do is just tear these poly pots in order to not damage the trees while taking them out. There we go, look at that beautiful, dense, healthy root ball. Thanks for taking the time, always appreciated.